Yeah, and also, I love how you give the music and the arrangement room to breathe. So it means when you come back in, it's like, oh, I'm ready to come back in because I'm
Yeah,
inspired to
yeah.
be on my own beat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, you understand. You know what's going on. I mean, I just wanted to expand and instead of like the regular
Cloudy World, and today we're gonna be talking about Chief Keef and his impact and why Almighty Soul 2 is a genuine classic masterpiece. So let's take it back to 2013. This is really what many people would consider to be the height or their introduction into Chief Keef. So in this era, this is when Chief Keef was still locked in, still Big 300. Really, it just kind of came out of the Chicago O Block scene, and he was getting a lot of looks on him. It's kind of when he made the first project, Almighty Soul. Now, this personally was one of my favorite Chief Keef projects. Sucker, Ape, Honchos, Blew My High, Salty, Baby What's Wrong With You, and Yesterday are still in my playlist to this day. So many would say that this is a genuine classic, or at the very least, a solid project that's lasted a decade in people's minds. Now, when Chief Keef dropped this project, many people were unbelievably excited and waiting to see what he'll be dropping next. And whether you know anything about Chief Keef or not, one thing is that Chief Keef often marches to the beat of his own drum. After he dropped this, he dropped Back from the Dead 2. He then had a lot of leak files, a few different mixtapes, The W, Thoughtbreaker, I Am Nobody, 2017 Deluxe, one of my favorites. I also like the Boot Gucci Sosa, which is, a little small project he did with Gucci Mane. He had 3 different leaks: The Life of Glowboy, Beat the Streets, Bang 3 Part 2, Back from the Dead 2. Point being that Chief Keef was just dropping music on music on music. And many people, whether they like it or not, have to appreciate how consistently creative Chief Keef was with his production and his impact. Chief Keef was one of the few rappers who you can call them an everyman. Kanye, you could say, was the creator or the beginning of the everyman in hip hop, being an artist that can produce, rap, and make their own beats at a high level production level. Now, many people would say, well, to compare Kanye with Chief Keef wouldn't be fair, but I disagree. Even when Chief Keef first came out, Kanye was a huge supporter and staunch supporter of Chief Keef, which many would be considering to be almost a contrast, considering that Kanye came in with the almost geek nerdy type of lyrical rap that kind of spoke against being what a street artist was, while Chief Keef was a youngin' from 300, a youngin' that came up from the south side of Chicago who wanted to talk his talk. And I don't see anything wrong with either of those perspectives. But what I do take note in, interestingly though, is that Kanye was a huge supporter of Keef, even though they were from such different walks of life. And when they made the Nobody track and I Don't Like remix, Chief Keef was actually flown out to Paris by Kanye. And the only reason that he left early and didn't make more than that track was because Chief Keef hated the food there. So just giving you a little bit of context on what kind of Chief Keef's journey creatively has been through, with over 18 different studio projects. To me, if I had to talk about my 5 favorite Chief Keef projects, just out of his main listing, I would say Finally Rich Deluxe, Almighty Soul. I then take it a few years later to Dedication. I really enjoyed Thoughtbreaker. And if I had to be honest, it would then be Almighty Soul 2. And honestly, in no official order, I can honestly say that Almighty Soul 2 is in my top 2 Chief Keef projects of all time. And there's next to no reason to understand why. With an, of course, honorable mention to Fornim, as Fornim was a very underrated and really consistent Chief Keef project that I think went under a lot of people's radar and had some really big features from Tato, Ball Out, and even, not Big Sean, but the joke of, Big Sean picking up him. So, kind of going further, when talking about Almighty Soul 2, that came out in 2014, an 11-year difference in gap. To give you context, I was a literal child at that point, and I was a huge Chief Keef stan coming from the south side myself. I had no idea how this project would open, and I was almost fearful of wondering what this project could almost do to Chief Keef's legacy. This is because in this new era, social media is king. If people meet Munch and say it's not good, a lot of people are gonna feel like it's not good, even if they didn't take time to listen to it, hear it, or do anything that actually showed them appreciating the content and the creative impact of the work itself. But Chief Keef destroyed those false narratives, had an amazing rollout, even doing a small interview with Apple Music. Going forward, he even spoke on and talked about how Almighty Soul 2 would be pushing the genre of music and honestly drill forward. Now, for many artists, that would be some pretty big shoes to fill, but for Chief Keef, something like that doesn't sound fake or inauthentic, as with every new project, he has pushed the sound forward. He's even created an entire subgenre of some of the most biggest beats of this last 3 to 4 years, glow beats, which have blown up a lot of underground rappers such as Ken Carson and Destroy Lonely. If you want to take it even further, you have people like Young Fazo, people like DC the Don. You could even go and talk about even some of these unique artists that are coming in, like Ian and people like that. But I don't even want to say they're inspired by Chief Keef as that way, but through production, their sounds are definitely reminiscent of that 2013 to 15 prime of Keef, where they're trying to talk they talk. And I honestly can appreciate that, and I value that, because it shows that the new generation has those it's inspired by. Because to me, the two artists that directly inspire this new generation the most are Chief Keef and Playboi Carti. The way they dress, the way they sound, the way they've inspired music, their beat production especially. You could say that people may try to copy Carti's cadence, but when you talk about production and the beats they flow on, I hear a lot of glow beats and Chief Keef-esque beats, much more than I care to think most people would admit. So going into Almighty Soul 2, when you have the impact of Chief Keef's legacy stamped, but maybe not the commercial success, it made many people wonder, where was Chief Keef gonna go next with this project? And Chief Keef delivered. Almighty intro was one of Chief Keef's best intros of all time, a strong top 3, with to me, some of the things coming from Dedication and the original Almighty Soul being the only two that I think match this energy. Though I did really appreciate and value Thoughtbreaker's intro as well. Going into Neff Nim with Ball Out and G Herbo, Chief Keef has a really aggressive energy that he just consistently lets out on a track with G Herbo, where usually Herbo is that dude that talks his talk the most. So it was a really cool way to see them both play into each other's energy, and it was unique in seeing how they went back and forth. Treat Myself is definitely one of my favorite songs on the album. I feel like Chief Keef doesn't talk his talk enough in this new era, and I really appreciated this track because hearing him so clear with such amazing and breathtaking production allowed his sound and his voice and his skill to really be highlighted on this album and project. Then going into the Jesus skit with Michael Blackson being a returner on Chief Keef's skits, as his first skit was funny. You got robbed, you had 2 chains, you got robbed for your chain, now you got 1. That was an amazing skit last time, and he didn't disappoint this time either, as Lil Nar and him went crazy on the Jesus song after that. One thing to really take note of during this project, to really go in depth, is that Chief Keef isn't just making some street drill music. His drill beats have turned into this gospel sound of drill and glow beats that I haven't heard anyone do before, and I could honestly say, at the very least on a production level, this album has pushed rap and drill music forward, and I think we're gonna feel its effects in these next few years to come. Going even further, talking about Too Trim, a unique mix of different vibes and synths, going into Runner by Chief Keef, which I really like as well. Then going into Band It Up with Tierra Whack, which, let's talk about these features for a second. Chief Keef to me is one of the strongest supporter of women rappers in the industry, and I'm being so serious. I am genuinely being so serious. I think that Chief Keef has one of the strongest ways of supporting women rappers. Tierra Whack went crazy on this track, which I loved, along with the next track, Grape Trees, with Sexy Red. Now, Red and Keef is a match made in heaven, and I think Red to me is honestly, at this point, I think that she has the right to say she is the woman version of Chief Keef. I think that the way she produces her sound, the way Keef loves her music and her energy, and the way that she gets a lot of people really turned up, at least from a Chicago kid, I love her sound and I really appreciate it. 1, 2, 3 being an amazing mix of new sounds from Chief Keef, and then going right into a nice interlude with Drifting Away, which was amazing. This might be the track from this album, but then that boy Quavo comes in with an amazing feature from Never Fly Here, which kind of makes you remind you that Quavo was once that guy on the Migos. Let's never forget. Prince Charming, again, being I think my 3rd favorite song on the album, as Chief Keef just goes crazy as usual, and honestly, I love it. Believe, Tony Montana flow, and I'm trying to sleep are a really good and pretty concise outro that I think allows this album to really flow really well. I think Chief Keef chose and had to take a few songs off as well because it's about the flow with this album. And to me, this was the most easily flowable album since, I have to say, 2014-15 Chief Keef.